What could have led a girl to lock herself in a basement, devouring rats to survive? This question echoes in Captain Victor Alencar's mind as he navigates through the memories of his childhood in his hometown. After years of facing storms and dangers at sea, he finally returns, carrying with him the hope of finding Clara, his daughter he had left behind as a child. However, when he enters the family's old mansion, he is faced with a terrifying reality that turns his dream of reunion into a nightmare. Victor always dreamed of being a hero, a present father who would protect his daughter from any harm. But when he opens the door to the basement, he finds Clara locked up, in a deplorable state, her empty eyes reflecting a horror he could never have imagined. She is so thin that the bones seem to almost tear her skin, and the scene becomes even more unbearable when he realizes that, in order to survive, she was forced to feed on rats. The shock is overwhelming, and Victor feels as if the ground has disappeared beneath his feet. The walls of the mansion, which once held the memories of laughter and family moments, now seem to whisper dark secrets. The atmosphere is dense, almost palpable, and Victor feels a chill down his spine. He wonders what might have happened in his absence as his heart sinks to see his daughter in such a desolate state. Clara's transformation is only one part of an even more terrifying picture. As he looks at her belly, swollen and pulsating abnormally, a new wave of terror hits him. He realizes that there is something inside her, something that should not be there. While investigating what happened, Victor begins to unearth truths that he would rather have left buried. He discovers that his departure for the sea was not only a search for freedom, but also an abandonment that left Clara vulnerable to forces he could never comprehend. The murmurs of an ancient seafaring curse resurface, revealing that her actions in the past have set off a chain of horrific events that now threaten her daughter's life. Victor's journey is not only a race against time to save Clara, but also a path of self-knowledge. He reflects on his failures as a father and how the choices he made shaped his destiny and that of his daughter. In his search for answers, he finds small moments of interaction with the city's residents, who look at him with a mixture of respect and disapproval. These interactions force him to confront his past and wonder if he really is a hero or just a man who has shirked his responsibilities. Every step he takes inside the mansion is a reminder of what he left behind, and the fight to rescue Clara turns into an internal battle. He realizes that he must face not only the supernatural forces that threaten her life, but also the ghosts of his own history. Will he be able to save his daughter before the creature inside her awakens? Or will he be consumed by the horrors of a past he can't ignore? The answer to that question could change everything. Victor Alencar felt his heart tighten as he stared at Clara's thin and frightened figure. Her gaze, a mixture of despair and disillusionment, pierced him like a blade. He wondered how he could have let his daughter live in such a state. The basement, which had once been a place of banter and laughter, was now a maze of horror where every shadow seemed to dance with the echoes of a past he had tried to forget. The image of Clara devouring rats to survive haunted him. What would have led such a sweet girl to lock herself in the dark, transforming herself into something he barely recognized? Victor felt guilty for not having been there, for having chosen the sea instead of the safety and love that Clara needed. That choice, made in search of freedom, now seemed like a condemnation. As he tried to approach her, he noticed the signs of a transformation that went beyond the physical. Clara was not just a lost child. She was a survivor in a world that seemed to have forgotten her. Her gaze, once full of life, was now a reflection of a horror he could not comprehend. The awareness that because of her, She had been left at the mercy of something so dark began to erode Victor's resolve. "Clara," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "It's me, Dad. I'm here to take you home." She didn't answer, just stared at him with those empty eyes, and that made him feel a lump in his throat. He remembered how Clara used to run to him when she came back from the sea, hugging him tightly, as if the whole world could wait. Now, that same girl was there, fragile and distant, and the weight of guilt weighed on him like an anchor. Victor pulled away a little, trying to organize his thoughts. He needed to understand what had happened. He remembered some conversations he had heard before leaving, whispers about a curse that weighed on the Alencar family. That seemed absurd, but now it sounded like a plausible explanation for what he was seeing. The mixture of realities became increasingly confusing. He decided he needed help, and as soon as he came out of the basement, he met the family's old maid, Donna Elvira, who had always been a constant presence in his childhood. Her white and disheveled hair did not hide the concern in her wrinkled face. "Captain Victor," she exclaimed, her eyes wide. "What happened? Where is Clara?" The pain in her voice made Victor feel even more guilty. "She's in the basement, Donna Elvira. We need help. She's not well." Donna Elvira put her hand on her chest, as if she were about to faint. "My God! What did the girl do to deserve this? And you, Victor, what did you do?" Her words were an accusation and a concern at the same time. Victor felt anger and sadness mingle within him. He didn't want to be questioned. He didn't want people to see him as a villain in his own story. I left her here. That's all my fault." "Guilt won't help your daughter now," Donna Elvira said, her voice soft but firm. "We need to take her to the doctor. There are things that medicine can cure, but there are also things that only love can fix. And you need to show her that." Victor nodded slowly, determination beginning to take shape in his heart. He could not change the past, but he could do what was in his power now. The weight of responsibility was overwhelming, but he knew he couldn't fail again. When she returned to the basement, Clara was calmer, as if she felt his presence. "Come on, Clara," he said, extending his hand. "I'm going to get you out of here." She hesitated, but finally her fingers touched Victor's. The touch was fragile, but there was a spark of hope. As they walked together toward the exit, he realized that the road ahead would be difficult. Clara needed much more than a simple doctor. She needed understanding, love, and, above all, a father who was truly present. However, as soon as they reached the surface, they were greeted by curious looks and murmurs. The townspeople, who had always admired Victor as a hero, now seemed suspicious, as if he were a stranger who had returned to cause more pain. He could feel the tension in the air, and doubt settled in his mind. Would he be able to redeem himself? Could he really be the father that Clara needed? The walk to the city was marked by a heavy silence. People swerved as they passed, whispering to each other. Victor felt like an outcast in his own land, a man who had failed to protect what he loved most. Insecurity was growing within him, and he wondered if he could face not only the external challenges, but also his own internal demons. Donna Elvira walked beside him, noticing his internal struggle. "You need to believe," she whispered. "Change starts from within. Clara needs you, and you need her. Together you can weather any storm." Her words echoed in his mind, but doubt still consumed him. How could he be the man Clara needed when he himself was so lost? The fight for their survival had only just begun, and Victor knew that the greatest challenge was yet to come. How to face a curse that seemed to have its roots in its own history. He needed to find the answers, not only to save Clara, but to find himself. As Victor walked beside Clara, the weight of guilt and responsibility seemed to increase with each step. He looked at his daughter, still so frail, and his heart tightened. The image of the girl devouring rats still haunted him. How had he let this happen? The question echoed in his mind, a constant reminder of his failure. He knew he couldn't erase the past, but the pain of knowing that Clara had suffered alone was like an open wound in her chest. The road to the city was full of memories. Every corner, every building brought up memories of happier times. He remembered when Clara ran along the beach, her laughter mingling with the sound of the waves. Now the same city seemed strange and hostile. The residents' looks were like thorns, each piercing their self-esteem. He felt the weight of his choice to leave Clara, and it made him more vulnerable at every turn. When they finally arrived at the city centre, Donna Elvira suggested that they go to the doctor's house. The man, known for his abilities, could help Clara regain her health, but Victor knew that physical healing was only a part of what she needed. He himself was broke, and the idea that the doctor could fix his daughter made him uneasy. How could he rely on an external solution when the root of the problem was inside his own home? As they walked, a group of children ran by, laughing and playing. Victor stopped, a lump in his throat. Clara looked at those children with a mixture of desire and sadness. What he saw in her gaze cut him deeply. He remembered how she had always dreamed of being like them, full of energy and joy. Now all that remained was a sketch of that girl he knew. Her gaze reflected a chasm he didn't know how to fill. "Clara," he said, trying to find the right words. "Do you remember how we used to play on the beach? Of how you always wanted to build sandcastles?" Her response was a heavy silence. The emptiness that took the place of his laughter was deafening. Donna Elvira, noticing the tension, tried to intervene. "We will focus on taking her to the doctor. Then we can think about how to bring back the good memories." But Victor knew that good memories were not enough. He needed to do more. It was as if he were in a drifting boat, and Clara was the only anchor that held him in place. When they arrived at the doctor's house, the atmosphere was tense. The doctor, a grey-haired man with a watchful eye, quickly assessed Clara, but Victor noticed a worried expression on her face. "She needs immediate care," the doctor said. "But there is a problem. She may not just be physically ill." The doctor's words hit Victor like a blow. What did that mean? What had happened to his daughter beyond what he already knew? The fear of discovering the depth of Clara's suffering made her stomach turn. He wanted to understand, but at the same time, he feared that the truths he might find would be even more painful. While the doctor treated Clara, Victor walked away to reflect. He leaned against the wall of the waiting room, closing his eyes and trying to control the wave of emotions that invaded him. He remembered his youth, the dreams he had of becoming a great sailor, of exploring the world. But what did that mean now? He had left his family behind in search of adventure, and now he was reaping the bitter fruits of his decision. "Are you okay?" Donna Elvira's voice brought him back to reality. He looked at her, feeling the pain reflected in his gaze. "You need to be strong, Victor. Clara needs you now more than ever." Her words hit him. He couldn't be weak. He needed to find a way to get back on his feet, even if it meant confronting his own fears. When he entered the room again, he saw Clara with her eyes closed, her breathing calm. A part of him wished that everything would end there, that the cure would be simple. But he knew that the battle had only just begun. How could he help his daughter face the demons that haunted her if he was fighting his own? "You'll be fine, Clara," he muttered, though the doubt in his voice was undeniable. "I'm here with you." But deep down, he didn't know if he was being sincere. What could you do to really change the situation? He had no answers. The doctor left the room, and Victor felt his heart race. "She needs psychological support," the doctor said. "It's crucial that you're present, not just physically, but emotionally. What she went through is not something that can be cured with medicine." Those words echoed in Victor's mind. He knew he would need to delve into his own pain to help Clara. The barriers he had built over the years would have to be torn down. He would have to give up his own resistance to become the father she needed. As they walked back home, the tension became palpable. The silence between them was loaded with unspoken meanings. Victor felt that he was on the precipice, about to face something much bigger than himself. He needed to reconnect with Clara, not just as a father, but as someone he had also lost. They were on this healing journey together, and he promised himself that he would not fail again. The shadows of the city seemed longer and more menacing as they walked, and with each step, Victor felt the pressure increase. He was about to enter a battle not only for Clara's health, but for redemption itself. What would he do when the truth came out? He wasn't sure, but he knew he couldn't go back. He needed to face his fears, not just for Clara, but for himself. The fight for freedom and life was just beginning. As Victor and Clara walked back home, the weight of responsibility became almost unbearable. Each step seemed to resonate in his mind like an echo of his failures, a constant reminder that he had walked away from his daughter at a time when she needed him most. The doctor's words still hung in the air. She needs psychological support. That sentence was like a scream, a summons for Victor to look inside himself and confront not only Clara's pain, but also his own. The city, once familiar, now turned into a labyrinth of guilt and regret. The faces that passed by them were shadows of a past that he could not change. Victor felt that the looks of others were judgmental, as if each person was aware of their history and what they had lost. He wished that he could hide, that he could find a safe place where there were no consequences for his actions. "Dad?" Clara's voice brought him back to reality. He looked at her and saw the fragility in her eyes, and it hit him like an arrow. "Why don't you talk to me?" What once seemed like a simple question now turned into a silent scream that echoed within him. He realized that while he worried about being strong, he had forgotten that true strength lay in being vulnerable. "Sorry, Clara," he said, his voice cracking. "I'm trying to understand all of this." Tears began to form in his eyes, and he allowed himself to feel the pain he had kept for so long. He was facing not only Clara's pain, but his own pain, the choices that led him to walk away. He had sought adventure and freedom, but what he really found was loneliness and regret. The road seemed longer now, and each step was an internal struggle. Victor wanted to be the father Clara needed, but that meant confronting his own demons. He was not just a man lost in a sea of guilt. He was a father who had failed and who was determined to redeem himself. But how could he do this if he himself did not know how to forgive himself? When they got home, Clara sat on the couch looking even more tired. Silence filled the space, heavy and oppressive. Victor didn't know where to start. What should he say to bring comfort to his daughter who was so broken? He sat next to her, his hand hesitating on her arm, as if afraid to further break the fragile bond that remained between them. "Clara," he began, his voice trembling. "I know I wasn't the father you deserved. I was selfish." The words went out like a torrent, a confession he had kept for so long. He wanted her to know that he was there, that he was willing to fight for her, but also that he was fighting for himself. "I left you alone when you needed me the most, and I'm sorry for everything." Tears streamed down Clara's face, and Victor felt a sharp pain in his heart. He wanted to hug her, to let her know that he was not alone, but guilt prevented him from moving. "I don't want you to forgive me right now, but I want you to know that I'm here and that I'll do whatever it takes to help you." Her gaze, once distant, began to shine with a spark of hope. "Are you going to stay with me? Forever?" The question was simple, but the depth of what she asked for was immense. He knew he couldn't promise he would never fail again, but he could promise he was willing to try, to do the work necessary to reconnect with her. "Yes, Clara," he replied, his voice firm now. "I'll stay with you. I'm going to fight for you." And in that moment, he realized that the real fight was not only against the demons that haunted Clara, but against his own fears and insecurities. He had to face the reality that success would no longer be measured in personal achievements, but in being a present and loving father. From that night on, Victor decided that he could not continue to live in the past. He began to open up to Clara about his own weaknesses, sharing with her his insecurities and fears. Over the next few weeks, they began to build a new kind of relationship, one that was grounded in trust and honesty. They talked about their feelings, about what had happened, and it brought them closer and closer. Victor realized that the true overcoming was not in forgetting the past, but in accepting it and learning from it. He began to understand that Clara did not need a perfect father, but a father who was willing to strive and compromise. Every laugh they shared, every tear they shed together was a step toward healing. And so, as they walked together toward an uncertain future, Victor knew the journey would be long and difficult, but he was ready. He had found a new purpose, not only to protect Clara, but also to rebuild himself through her. He could not change what had happened, but he could change what was to come. And that, for him, was the real success. Life, with its lessons and challenges, was just beginning to reveal itself. Victor sat on the couch, his mind still buzzing with everything that had happened. Clara seemed more at ease by his side, but he knew that her internal battle was far from over. He looked at his daughter's face, the marks of her pain still visible, and a crushing weight settled on his chest. There were so many things he wanted to say, but the words seemed to get lost in the confusion of his thoughts. "Clara," he began hesitantly, "do you remember when I used to tell bedtime stories?" He tried to bring up joyful memories, but soon realized that this was not what she needed at that moment. "Yes, Dad," Clara replied, a shy smile appearing on her face, as if this were a small ray of sunshine in the midst of the storm. "The stories about the princes and princesses?" "Yes," he interrupted, feeling a wave of nostalgia. "But I realize now that the stories I told were just escapisms. I let go of the true story that was happening around us." He took a deep breath, seeking the courage to continue. "I left you alone." Clara's smile vanished, and Victor could see sadness invade his gaze again. He wished he could erase the pain she felt, but he didn't know how. "Why weren't you there, Dad? I needed you." Her words hit him like a punch in the stomach. He wanted to justify himself, but instead, he decided to be honest. "I was lost, Clara. In search of success, in search of, I don't know. I thought if I achieved more, everything would be fine. but I didn't realize that what I really needed was you by my side." The room was shrouded in a heavy silence. It was as if time had stopped, and every second that passed seemed to make the weight of guilt grow even more. "I don't know how to fix it," he admitted, his voice breaking. "But I want to try. Will you give me this chance?" Clara looked at him, her eyes reflecting an internal conflict. "I want to, but what if you fail again?" The vulnerability in his question cut Victor's heart. He knew he couldn't promise he would never make a mistake again, but he could promise he would try. "I can't guarantee that I won't fail," he said. "But I can guarantee that I won't give up. I'm going to fight to be the father you deserve, and for that, I need you to help me too. If you're willing to do it, we can do it together." Clara's gaze began to shine again, and he saw the spark of hope return. "I'm going to try, Dad, but you also need to be honest with me. I don't want you to hide your feelings." "That's right," he agreed. "I promise to be honest. Let's build this together." The following weeks were a new challenge. As Victor opened up about his own fears and insecurities, he realized that it wasn't just Clara who was struggling. He was also facing a new kind of battle. Doubts began to arise again, like shadows trying to haunt his mind. He wondered if he really had the ability to be a good father, or if he was still stuck in the mistakes of the past. On one of these days, while walking with Clara through the park, he watched her interact with other children. She was laughing, but there was still a trace of insecurity in her posture. Victor wanted to protect her from everything, but he knew he couldn't do that. He had to let her face her own challenges, even if it left him distressed. "Dad," Clara called, interrupting her thoughts. "Are you thinking of something sad?" He hesitated, but decided to be honest again. "Yes, I'm thinking about how wrong I did, on how I let you go through so much pain." He saw her expression change, and it made him feel vulnerable. "I feel so bad that I wasn't there." "I don't want you to feel bad," Clara said, looking him in the eye. "I just want you to be here now. This is already a start." Victor smiled, feeling a little lighter. "You're right. What matters is that we're together now, and that's what I want to focus on." He knew the journey would be long and full of obstacles, but he was determined to keep going. As they continued to walk, Victor began to notice how his interactions with Clara were changing. He was learning to see the world through her eyes, to appreciate the little things that had previously gone unnoticed. With every laugh shared, with every heartfelt conversation, he felt like he was reconnecting not only with Clara, but also with himself. However, this new dynamic has also affected others in their lives. Mariana, Clara's mother, began to notice the changes in Victor. He was more present, more engaged, but the new reality has also brought out his own insecurities. She wondered if there was still room for her in Victor's life, given that he seemed so focused on redeeming himself as a father. "Victor," she said one day during a family dinner, "I realize you're trying hard, and that's wonderful. But what about us? What happens to our relationship?" He looked at her, feeling the tension in the air. "I want us to be able to find a way too. I know I wasn't present, but I'm willing to work on it. We both have to do it together." Mariana nodded, but uncertainty was stamped on her face. "This will not be easy. We need to be honest with each other. The pain you caused is still here." Victor felt the weight of her words. He knew that the healing journey was not only Clara's, but also his relationship with Mariana. He took a deep breath, acknowledging that reconciliation would be a complicated process, but he was committed to making it work. Victor's life began to transform, and he realized that personal overcoming was not just about him, but about everyone around him. He was learning to deal with his failures and to seek forgiveness, not only from Clara, but from himself. Each day was a new opportunity to grow, to find a new balance between his responsibilities as a father and his own desires. Thus, even in the face of difficulties, Victor was beginning to see small signs of resilience. He was learning that true wealth did not come from material success, but from the love and connection he built with Clara and Mariana. And as life went on, he knew the road ahead would still be challenging, but he was ready to face it, one step at a time. Victor watched the horizon through the window as sunlight filtered through the leaves of the trees in the park. Clara was just a few steps away, playing with other children. He felt a mixture of joy and apprehension. I knew that despite the laughter and the lightness of the moment, there was an internal battle that still needed to be faced. He turned to Mariana, who was sitting next to him. Her gaze was wary, but there was a glimmer of hope. "You're doing well," she said, in an encouraging tone. "Clara looks happier." "Yes, but..." Victor hesitated. "I still feel like I'm not enough. What I did in the past is not just going to go away." Mariana paused and looked at him. "The past does not define who you are now, Victor. What matters is what you do from now on. You're putting in the effort, and that's important." These words resonated with Victor. He realized that he had to stop punishing himself for previous mistakes. What I needed to do was build a better future. He remembered what Clara had said, "I just want you to be here now." That simple statement became a mantra in his mind. During the following weeks, Victor took small steps to connect more with Clara. One day, he decided to prepare dinner together. He invited her to help him make a simple pasta recipe. As they cut the ingredients, he realized that these moments were precious. The shared laughter, the small conversations about school and friends, all of this helped to heal the wounds of the past. "Dad, do you remember that story you told about the dragon and the princess?" Clara asked, with a smile on her face. "I liked it so much." "Yes, I do," he replied with a nostalgic smile. "But I realize now that the real story is the one we're writing together. Every day is a new page." Clara nodded, her expression lit up. "Can we write a new story then?" "Yes, we can," Victor said, feeling his own confidence grow. He began to see that he didn't have to be perfect. He just needed to be there. At school, Clara began to open up more, and Victor noticed that his daughter was making new friends. He remembered how she used to be hesitant to socialize. One day, while they were eating ice cream, she said, "You know, Dad, I made friends with Sophia. She's pretty cool. We understand each other." "What do you like about her?" Victor asked, interested. "She likes the same things I do. We talk about books and movies," Clara replied, her joy evident. Victor smiled when he heard her excitement. He realized that while Clara was finding his voice, he was also finding his own. As time went on, Victor began to feel more comfortable addressing his own feelings and insecurities. He started talking to Mariana about his concerns. "You know, sometimes I wonder if I'm doing everything right. If I'm being the father she needs," he confessed. Mariana looked at him, her eyes full of understanding. "Doubt is natural, Victor. The important thing is that you're trying, and Clara feels it. The love you have for her is what really counts." These conversations have become more frequent. Victor began to open up about his fears and anxieties. He talked about the weight of the expectations he felt, not only as a father, but also as a professional. Mariana listened to him, offering a safe space where he could be vulnerable. Over time, Victor realized that the failures he feared were not the end of the world. They were learning opportunities. he began to understand that making mistakes didn't mean he was a failure. Each mistake was a lesson that helped him grow and become a better version of himself. On a sunny day, as they walked through the park, Clara pulled his hand and asked them to stop in front of a small art exhibition. She stared fascinated at a colorful painting. "Look, Dad, this painting is beautiful. Can we do something like this at home?" Victor smiled. "Of course, let's buy some paints and brushes. We can make an afternoon of art." They spent the afternoon having fun, laughing and creating. As they painted, Clara talked about how she would like to be an artist when she grew up. Victor encouraged her, saying that she could be anything she wanted. He realized that by supporting her, he was also supporting himself. He was learning to believe in himself. The small interactions such as art, afternoons and dinners together began to build a new bond between father and daughter. Victor realized that true success was not measured by external achievements, but by the solid foundation he was creating in his relationship with Clara and Mariana. He also began to reflect on how his beliefs about success and happiness were changing. One night, as they said goodbye before going to sleep, Clara looked at him with a smile. "Dad, I like how we're together now. You're the best father I could have." Her words touched Victor's heart. He felt stronger than ever. He knew there would still be challenges ahead, but now he was ready to face them, not just for Clara, but for himself. He had found the inner strength he had been looking for. And with that, he was building a brighter future full of love. He recalled a time when he thought that having a successful career was what mattered. Now he saw that love and connection were the true sources of wealth. The journey wasn't easy, but every step Victor took brought him closer to who he really wanted to be. He began to apply the lessons he learned daily. He was acknowledging his weaknesses but also his strengths. And in doing so, she was becoming an example for Clara. Victor sat at the kitchen table, his eyes fixed on a yellowish envelope that rested in front of him. The weight of the past seemed heavier than ever. It was a letter he had received from his old job, a painful reminder of a time when his ambitions had led him to neglect his family. The feeling of failure invaded him, like a shadow that refused to leave him alone. He knew that this card represented not only a missed opportunity, but also a chance to regain something that seemed far away. At the same time, Clara and Mariana were in the next room, laughing and joking. The sound of their joy was a stark contrast to the storm brewing within him. He got up and went to the living room, where he saw Clara holding a sheet of paper full of colorful drawings. "Look, Dad, I made a new art." She displayed her work with pride, her eyes shining with happiness. "It's beautiful, Clara," Victor said, trying to smile, but the tension in his chest didn't leave him alone. He sat down next to her, but the joy of the moment could not dispel the darkness that enveloped him. The letter was a constant reminder that he still had to deal with his mistakes and the fragility of his new life. That night, after Clara went to bed, Victor stayed awake, reflecting on his choices. Mariana's words echoed in her mind. The past does not define who you are now, but how could he move on when the past still haunted him? He remembered the promises he had made to himself, to be a present father, to cherish the simple moments, but now he felt that he was about to lose everything again. The next morning, he decided to face his fears. With the letter in hand, Victor went to the park where he used to take Clara. The place was emptier than usual, and the gentle breeze seemed to whisper that it was time to make a decision. He sat down on a bench and began to write a response, expressing his willingness to change, to seek a new path, both professionally and personally. As he wrote, memories of his failures plagued him. He remembered when he decided to prioritize his career over his family. That relentless pursuit of success had alienated him from Clara and Mariana, and now he was struggling to redeem himself. He needed to confront not only the company that fired him, but also himself. The fear of being rejected again paralyzed him, but he knew he couldn't give up. The decision was made. Victor got up, his heart racing, and walked towards Clara's school. He needed to talk to her. He needed to share his insecurities and his fears. The idea of exposing his weaknesses was terrifying, but he knew that this was the only way to show Clara that it was possible to make mistakes and still get up. Upon entering the classroom, he found Clara among his friends. She smiled at the sight of him, and it gave her a boost of courage. "Can I talk to you a moment, Clara?" He took her to a quieter corner, away from the noise of the children. "Of course, Dad. What was it?" Clara looked curious, but Victor could see a trace of concern in her eyes. I need to tell you something," he began, his voice trembling. "I've made mistakes in the past, and sometimes I feel like I'm not the dad you deserve. I let work and success get me away from you and Mom, and I'm trying to change that." Clara looked at him confused, but at the same time there was an understanding in her eyes. "Dad, I just want you to be here now. It doesn't matter what happened before." These words touched Victor's heart in a way he didn't expect. It was as if Clara was giving him permission to forgive himself. He crouched down to be at her height. "Thank you, Clara. I promise that I will strive to be better, to be together, because you and Mom are my true wealth." Clara smiled broadly, and that smile seemed to light up the world around them. Victor felt that by sharing his insecurities, he was creating a space for vulnerability and connection. He was learning that he didn't have to carry the weight of the past alone. When they returned home, Mariana was in the kitchen, preparing dinner. Victor found her, and before she could ask about what had happened, he pulled her into a tight hug. "I'm ready to move on, Mariana. I'm ready to be the father and the man I've always wanted to be." Mariana looked him in the eyes, and Victor saw the pride reflected in them. "I've always believed in you, Victor. Now you need to believe in yourself too." That night, as he lay down, Victor realized that the journey of redemption would not be easy, but he was willing to fight for it. He had faced his fears, and in doing so, he had discovered a new strength within himself. The past might have its shadows, but the future promised light. He closed his eyes and smiled, imagining the days to come. With Clara and Mariana by his side, he was ready to build a new story, one where connection and love prevailed over any challenge. And by finally accepting who he really was, Victor knew he was on the right path to becoming the father he always wanted to be. Victor woke up the next morning feeling different. Sunlight poured in through the window, and he realized that it wasn't just the brightness of the day that woke him up, but a new perspective on his life. He stood up, determined to put into practice the promises he had made to himself and his family. It was time to act, to be the father that Clara and Mariana deserved. Breakfast was quiet, but it wasn't a heavy silence like before. There was a sense of anticipation in the air. Mariana paused for a moment, looking at him carefully. "I know, Victor, and I'm glad you're giving yourself that chance. Life is made of new beginnings, and you're ready for it now." That afternoon, after finishing the drawing with Clara, he decided it was time to reconnect with his passion for art. He had always loved to draw, but he had put that love aside amid the frenetic pace of work. Clara, still sleepy, stretched and asked, "Dad, will you help me finish my drawing this afternoon?" Victor smiled, feeling a warmth in his heart. "Of course, I'd love to help you. Let's do it together." As they ate, Victor felt the need to share with Mariana what was in his heart. "You know, Mariana, I realized that the time I spent focused on my career made me miss important moments. I don't want that anymore. I want to live each day by your side and cherish every second." With the little one by his side, he began to sketch new ideas, laughing and talking about what each one meant. Clara watched him with admiration, and this strengthened his resolve even more. Weeks passed, and Victor continued to dedicate himself to his new routine. He started taking Clara to the park every day after school. They played ball, had picnics, and explored nature together. Mariana noticed the change in Victor and often praised him, noticing how he was becoming more present and engaged. "You know, Victor, you look lighter. It's good to see that transformation in you," she commented one evening as they watched a family movie. The feeling of finally being on the right path filled Victor in a way he hadn't felt in years. He began accepting invitations to meet with friends, something he had avoided. During one of these meetings, an old co-worker commented on a new opportunity at his old company. Victor hesitated for a moment, but then he remembered what really mattered. "Thank you, but I'm focused on something else right now. I want to prioritize my family and my well-being." The words that came out of his mouth surprised him. He realized that by choosing a new direction, he was freeing himself from the weight that accompanied him. It was possible to succeed and still be there for those you loved. True success was no longer measured by titles or money, but by the quality of the relationships he cultivated. Victor also started to open up more with Mariana. Over dinner, he said, "I feel like I'm learning to be more vulnerable. I used to think that was a weakness, but now I see that it is a strength." Mariana smiled and held his hand. "Vulnerability connects us, Victor. This is how we build true relationships. I'm proud of you." Over time, Victor's relationships became deeper. He began to connect not only with his family, but also with friends. The dialogue flowed more naturally, and the laughter became more frequent. Every moment has become an opportunity for learning and growth for everyone. On a sunny afternoon, while they were in the park, Clara turned to him and said, "Dad, I feel like you're happier now. You just got more fun." That simple statement made Victor's heart overflow with joy. He realized that by seeking his own happiness and satisfaction, he was also providing a better environment for his daughter. As he looked to the future, Victor was no longer intimidated by his past mistakes. Instead, he saw them as stepping stones that led him there. He understood that everyone makes mistakes, but the important thing is how we choose to learn and grow from them. The journey of overcoming was not just about redeeming yourself, but about allowing yourself to be human with all its complexities. As the months passed, Victor became an example of resilience and change for Clara. He often encouraged her to express her feelings and not to be afraid to make mistakes. "The important thing is to try and learn from what we have experienced, daughter. It makes us stronger." The life lessons he now practiced daily became a key part of Clara's education. Victor looked at Mariana and Clara laughing together as they played in the park. He smiled, realizing that the real success was there, in that simple moment, but full of love. He had overcome his fears, rebuilt his relationships, and learned to value what really mattered. And above all, he was ready to continue this journey alongside his family, knowing that the past no longer defined him, but the choices he made each new day. Victor looked out the window of his house on a sunny day, the memories of the past few months flashing through his mind like a movie. He reflected on the transformation he had experienced, not only in himself, but also in the relationships he cultivated with Clara and Mariana. The journey of rediscovery took him to a place where he now understood that true success lay not in material achievements, but in the depth of human connections. These months of change have been challenging but also filled with joy. He recalled how, before, his life was dominated by work pressure and professional expectations. The stress made him distant, not only from his family, but also from himself. Now, as he looks back, Victor saw how he had overcome his limitations. He allowed himself to be vulnerable, which made him stronger. By opening up to Clara and Mariana, he began to see the value of empathy and honesty in relationships. Not only did this strengthen family bonds, but it also inspired Clara to express her own feelings. She now drew not only with the colors of her pencil, but also with the emotional freedom that Victor had taught her. Over time, Victor realized that his interactions with friends also became more meaningful. He recalled a recent encounter where, as he shared his experiences, other men began to open their hearts as well. This made him understand that many were facing their own internal battles, but that shared vulnerability could create unexpected bonds. Friendships that once seemed superficial were now deep and authentic, resulting in a circle of mutual support. Victor's restart was not without difficulties. He still faced days when self-doubt came up, but now he knew how to deal with it. He allowed himself to feel, reflect, and, most importantly, learn. The failures that once paralyzed him were now seen as opportunities for growth. He often told Clara, every mistake is a step toward learning, and learning is what makes us better. This philosophy became a pillar in her life and in her daughter's education. The new path Victor charted also had a significant impact on his career. Although he had left behind a job that didn't satisfy him, he began to explore new possibilities that inspired him. He remembered his passion for art, which he had abandoned. With the encouragement of Mariana and Clara, he began to participate in art workshops where he met incredible people who shared his interests. The creations that sprung from his heart were now more than mere artistic expressions. They symbolized his journey of self-discovery. The wealth Victor had sought had once turned into something far more meaningful. He realized that true prosperity lay in the ability to live fully, surrounded by love and understanding. The little things like a smile from Clara or a deep conversation with Mariana now brought more happiness than any financial bonus. He found joy in simple moments, such as having a family dinner or walking hand in hand with the two of them through the streets of the neighborhood. As Victor became more aware of his emotions and the feelings of those around him, he also began to reflect on the wisdom he had gained. He came to see the world through a new lens, where compassion and empathy were key. He realized that everyone faces challenges and that often a simple gesture of kindness could make a huge difference in someone's life. In his reflections, he often thought, life is a constant learning, and every interaction is an opportunity to grow. The lessons Victor learned throughout his journey became an integral part of his everyday life. He cultivated gratitude, valuing each day as a gift. He taught Clara about the importance of being thankful for the little things like a beautiful sunset or shared laughter. These lessons were shaping Clara to become a sensitive and conscious person who would also know how to value human connections. The harmony he found with himself and with the world allowed him to live in peace with the experiences he had gone through. Victor no longer saw his past as a burden, but as an essential part of his story. He broke free from the chains of guilt and shame by accepting his failures as part of life. And so, each day became a new opportunity to be the best version of himself, not only for him, but also for those he loved. Victor smiled as he watched Clara and Mariana playing together, surrounded by laughter and joy. He knew that, despite the challenges, he had found a new meaning in his life. The journey of overcoming and starting over has transformed him in ways he never imagined. He was ready to face the future, confident that love and connection would always be the guides on his journey. Victor watched Clara and Mariana laughing and playing in the garden, and a smile of satisfaction lit up his face. The sun shone brightly, reflecting the light that had lit up within him during his journey of transformation. He knew that life had its difficulties, but now, more than ever, he understood that every challenge was an opportunity in disguise. As the laughter echoed, he remembered how it all began. The pressure of work, the expectations that isolated him, the lack of connection. He thought about the sleepless nights, the feeling of always running after something that never satisfied him. But over time, Victor learned to look within himself and understand that true fulfillment was not in accumulating material possessions, but in creating genuine bonds with those he loved. "Look, Dad," Clara exclaimed, holding a colorful flower she had picked. "This one's for you." Victor crouched down and received the flower with affection. "Thank you, my little artist. She's beautiful, just like you." The purity of that exchange reaffirmed in his heart the importance of the little things. Each gesture, each moment shared, became a true richness. Mariana approached, a twinkle in her eye. "You know, love, I noticed that you're happier. It's as if a light has been lit in you." Mariana's words touched Victor deeply. He remembered how many times he had lost himself in his own insecurities, but now, next to them, he felt complete. "I've learned to value what really matters," he replied, his voice filled with emotion. "And it comes down to you, our family." The lessons Victor had learned became part of his routine. He was more present, more attentive to the emotions of Clara and Mariana. Conversations that were once superficial were now depths of shared feelings. He remembered a day when Clara asked him what happiness was about. Victor looked her in the eye and said, "Happiness is not about having everything. It's about appreciating what we have and who we are with." The words echoed in his mind like a mantra, and he realized that by teaching, he was also learning. The past no longer haunted him. He had found peace by accepting his failures and mistakes. "Every mistake is a step towards learning," he often repeated, and this became a motto that Clara now internalized. Victor's transformation was not limited to him, had a ripple effect on his family. Conversations about emotions, fears, and dreams became common in the house, creating an environment where everyone felt safe to express themselves. On a sunny afternoon, while they were sitting on the sofa, Clara came to him with a drawing. "Look, Dad, it's the three of us together." The drawing showed a close-knit family, surrounded by hearts. "It's perfect, Clara. That's who we are," he said, feeling a lump of emotion in his throat. "We are love." Mariana joined them, and together they contemplated the simplicity and beauty of that moment. But as life has its ups and downs, one day a storm approached. Victor received an unexpected call about a job opportunity that required him to move far away. He felt fear take over him. What if that change meant losing everything he had built? He hesitated, thinking of all the progress he had made. So, she decided to talk to Clara and Mariana. By sharing their fears, they came together in a circle of support. "You should do what makes you happy, Dad," said Clara, with the wisdom of someone who had learned the importance of happiness. "And if you're happy, so will we." Mariana added, "No matter where you go, we will always be by your side." Those words touched Victor's heart. He realized that the real choice was not between one job or another, but about the happiness he could take with him, regardless of the place. That night, as the stars shone in the sky, Victor said a silent prayer. He asked for guidance and clarity. At dawn, a sense of peace enveloped him. He understood that no matter what decision he made, the love he had cultivated in his life would accompany him. He wasn't alone, and that was what really mattered. Thus, with a new perspective, Victor allowed himself to move on. He accepted the job offer, but on the condition that his new life would not take him away from what he truly valued. He promised himself that he would continue to prioritize the relationships that had become so fundamental in his life. And in a touch of divine justice, the new city proved to be wonderful, full of opportunities and people who embraced its journey. He felt welcomed, as if the universe was conspiring in his favor. Victor knew that life was made of choices and that each one of them shaped his destiny. He became an example for Clara and Mariana, showing that living with authenticity and love was the true measure of success. With his family united and strengthened, he looked to the future with confidence, ready to face whatever lay ahead. And at the end of each day, when they gathered to share their stories, laughter, and dreams, Victor felt that he had found his home, not in a physical place, but in the connection he had cultivated with those he loved most. The journey of self-discovery, overcoming and starting over had transformed him, and he was ready to enjoy every moment, aware that the true richness of life was in the relationships he had built. Now Victor invited everyone to reflect on their own journeys. He believed that each one had their own story of overcoming to tell. Let's share our experiences, he said, because it is in exchange that we find strength. And with a smile, he encouraged everyone to connect, to seek depth in relationships, to value every moment. After all, life is a constant learning, and each of us has an important role in the history of the other. Let us together be light to each other, he concluded, hoping that his message would resonate in the hearts of all who listened to him.